Get 2 entrees and an appetizer for $25. Now, steak.
Okay, I wonder what I could do over here. Worst Cartoon Network shows, top 10.
Cartoon Network has given us some timeless cartoons over the last couple of decades, but they've also had their share of truly bad shows. Often, Cartoon Network frantically hid away these vile experiments gone wrong, desperately attempting to draw all our attention away from them. Some of these shows are painfully pandering, incredibly boring, or just plain ugly. So, we're going to check them out today. So let's take a look at the top 10 worst Cartoon Network shows of all time. As always, if you do like these shows, that's great. It's nice that you can enjoy something that I just can't. And in the end, it's just my silly personal opinion. With that said, on to the countdown. Number 10. Uncle Grandpa.
Huh.
This cartoon seems to make
My sister loved this for some reason.
Worst lists. And I can definitely
I can
see
see why people don't like it. It's
So it must have something that I'm not seeing. The entire show is like seeing Rebecca Sugar's hyperactive, psychotic brother on LSD. In case you don't know the stellar plot to this show, what essentially happens in each episode is Uncle Grandpa goes around to children's houses every day to check up on them. He talks to children and lives in his van. Am I the only one finding this concept really creepy?
Oh, Uncle Grandpa. He's not just your Uncle Grandpa. He's everyone in the world's Uncle and Grandpa. And when he comes to visit, it's sure to be a time you'll never forget.
It doesn't help that he already looks like he just escaped from the loony bin. Uncle Grandpa himself is not a pleasant character to watch. He's intensely aggravating. And I think the only way I could laugh at him was if he was run over by a steamroller. They even did a crossover with Steven Universe at one point.
They did?
As though mixing gold with sewage would make it slightly more tolerable. But Uncle Grandpa is so bad that it managed to make Steven Universe actually bad. This is the only Steven Universe episode I have not watched. I watched it for 1 minute and closed it, removing it from my library and never looking at it again. This cartoon is so astonishingly awful that it can manage to soil the record of one of my favorite cartoons of all time. Clearly, though, I'm in the minority, as this sewage pipe of a show has leaked out 4 more seasons. To be honest, this show is very high on the list, because as surreal and bad as it is, I like the good messages.
I'm about to say, was it like the duck bro? But that's on Nickelodeon, like the ducks that deliver bread.
Don't worry, bro. None of this is canon. But this is.
And for number 9, Super Noobs.
Never heard of it.
The show was cancelled after 13 episodes. And you wonder why? Even the name of this show sounds like it's trying to appeal to the younger generations. And the title of each show is a clever play on the word noob. Except it's not clever. Who keeps greenlighting these pandering heaps of bile? And don't forget, they've got battle balls to fight alien ninjas.
Wait, what? That sounds like something out of a cheesy 90s sitcom.
Being tossed around in MMORPGs 13 years ago. It has now become a word that makes me want to pull my hair out in fury because of shows like this.
It's a play on words.
These kids are painfully overdone stereotypes. You've got the jock, the nerd, the cool kid. It's just one big stereotype parade. Admittedly, this one is pretty high on the list because the animation is actually okay. Its CG isn't too lazy and it's pleasant enough to look at. But mostly, it's a bland, tasteless cement mix of stereotypes, desperately trying to appeal to the young teen demographic. Number 8.
I guess it doesn't matter.
Problem Solvers. The first thing you may notice about Problem Solvers is that its animation is incredibly ugly to look at, to the point where I lost my appetite just by watching the first episode. The
What
only
the
good advice
heck?
I can give this cartoon
That looks
is
like
that
a
its voice
fever
acting
dream.
isn't absolutely terrible. I mean, sure, it's not good, but it's passable by 1980s anime dub standard. Our three main people, they might be aliens, I can't quite tell. Go around solving surreal problems like a roller coaster that drives people forward in time. I admit that concept is kind of creative, but good God, how can I care when the show is so ugly? We have some sort of mud monster? A guy that looks like a fish-human hybrid, and by far the ugliest animation of a human I have ever seen.
I took my elementary school class in the weird amusement park. They all went out the roller coaster and came back on
That looks like a fever dream. It looks like someone's tripping when they made the animation.
Something about those faces is just
Oh my god.
right. I mean, look at this hideous thing. I can't even concentrate on what they're saying because I'm so revolted at that horrendous animation. Problem Solvers is just a mess. It's tedious, it's ugly, I definitely skip over it. Number 7. Johnny Test.
Johnny Test.
Originally, this was going on my worst cartoons list because this show really annoys me. I mean, it is definitely the most forgettable, teen-pandering garbage we've ever been given on Cartoon Network.
Don't worry, Psycho Sisters. With my new ninja prowess, there's no way Bling Bling Boy can stop me.
And at this point, that's
Kinda cringe, not gonna lie.
Everything about the annoying main character looks like it's ticking some executive's box for appealing to the young crowd. Fiery hair, turbocharged backpack, a talking dog, sticking to those stupid parental authority figures, a messy room. Yes, I hear those kids have messy rooms nowadays. That pretentious, self-entitled, overprivileged, smug, incredibly annoying smile. I just want to smack this kid, and he hasn't even said anything yet. Did anyone else notice that the main theme is a blatant ripoff of Green Day's American Idiot?
Head of fiery hair and a turbocharged backpack.
Really?
Except much less pleasant to listen to. They could not even come up with their own original jingle. Even the title of the show sounds like a ripoff of Cartoon Network's Johnny Quest. Johnny himself, the main character, is an obnoxious, overprivileged, self-absorbed show-off. Because,
Oh, great.
that's relatable.
Oh well.
And there's now over 91 episodes of this show.
There's 91.
So clearly they're appealing
Are
to
they still going?
7-year-olds? Maybe they're fascinated by the bright colors. I just don't see how else this mindless, pandering junk could stay on the air so long. I recommend you keep yourself, and especially any younger viewers, far away from this show. It's formulaic, it's dull, it's obnoxious, and it's just meant to bring the young hip crowd with no innovation whatsoever. Number 6. Secret Mountains Fort Horse. At least they're trying to do something original in this ugly crash site of a cartoon.
It is ugly.
Remember that rancid load of bile that was Uncle Grandpa? Well, its highly acclaimed creator made this as his original creation because, for some reason, an executive decided this
What
show
the
needed
hell?
to be aired. If there's any hope of humanity, that executive is now fired. What I didn't realize that was Uncle Grandpa was actually an improvement over this ugly tragedy of animation. If you manage to make a cartoon where Uncle Grandpa is actually a significant improvement, you know you should never work in animation again. This collection of doodles is just one big eyesore. The main characters consist of a giant butt monster named Fart. I wish I was kidding.
Oh, boy.
And a green thing covered in festering acne. And a half-naked purple thing in its underwear.
Imagine if you're blind and you're trying to describe this. Like, how would you picture that abomination in your mind?
You get just to turn down those awesome kids and stop having fun.
I think the cartoon is meant
Oh
to
god, I
be
couldn't
these
sit through it.
monsters trying to live in the human world. The first episode mainly revolves around the toilet and pizza.
That's right.
You get it?
Funny laugh, humor.
Now he's confused.
Oh god, it hurts to
Some people
watch.
give
It's
reviews of
cringe.
this show, and they never really seem like reviews. They seem more public broadcast. Secret Mountains Fort Orson is ugly, lazy, and boring. If you see this rancid trash bag of a cartoon, by all means do not watch it. Number...
We can't pay any of our bills. We have a baby on the way. She is the victim of the West Side Ripper. We made a podcast about this together. We own this story. Change our lives.
Okay, so I'm thinking.
There's nothing holding you back. What would your thing be?
Fine. King Star King. I talked before about King Star King in my worst cartoons list, so I'll try to keep it brief. It's basically a grotesque, bizarre acid trip, and I do strongly suspect someone is gaining personal gratification from it. I mean, there's lots of...
Wait, this aired on Cartoon Network? How did that air? That would be shut down instantly by parents today if it aired.
Someone being ripped apart or swallowed or vomited. It's among the ugliest animation I've watched, as well as some of the most
It's like one of those animations that's like realistic, but it's heavily animated.
Ugly imagery. Personally, I avoid this one like the plague. And number 4, Teen Titans Go.
I couldn't stand this one.
A sequel to Teen Titans? Oh, come on. How bad could it be? It's a Teen Titans sequel. That show was awesome. Oh god, I'm blind. The colors, they're so blindingly bright. Remember that detailed, highly stylized, and incredibly charming show on Cartoon Network called Teen Titans? Well, one day, those brilliant CNN executives said, hey, let's replace all the smart writing, beautiful action scenes, and clever jokes and human drama with painfully annoying chibi characters.
Not only that, and I don't really like the animation. I just can't do I can't do DC. I'm sorry, folks. I'm not DC. I don't care. It's just not my jam. You know what I mean? There's things that you like that I don't like, and there's things I like that you don't like.
Did they specifically say to the original voice actors, we need you to talk more obnoxiously? Was their voice director just recording the banter in the lunch cafeteria? The first episode is about how good Robin's sandwiches are. We have gone from the exploration of a team member's deep aggression and depression to the joy of eating a sandwich. Did they just fire every original writer and replace them with chimpanzees? Good God. This 10-minute episode just goes on and on about how much they love these sandwiches. And I'm only 1 minute and 38 seconds in. And now they're going on a quest to find the ancient sandwich of power. This is just unbelievably stupid. Now they're fighting over who gets the first bite. Oh, Jesus. How about we make the next episode about what will the Teen Titans get each other for Christmas? The more I watch these stupid plots, the more stupid I felt. The vapid dialogue, the horrible animation, the blindingly bright colors, the bad rapping.
When I say yummy, you say pie.
Teen Titans Go.
Oh crap, I can't. Come on.
Tore it up, spat on it, then shat on it. By all means, I recommend Teen Titans Original. However, do not watch Teen Titans Go. Number 3. Mr. Pickles. I've already mentioned
Mr.
one of my worst
Great. It's one of those animations that is really realistic, but it's still animated.
Genius behind this title, as well as it having some of the most ugly color schemes I've
Oh
ever
my
seen.
God! How would that be? How would that be aired on?
The entire cartoon itself is about on par with Family Guy's worst moments. Shock humor is okay, but making 20 straight minutes of gross-out animated violence just puzzles me. I mean, a person will die horribly and gruesomely or be painfully tortured to death, and that's it. Where's the punchline? What reaction is a person in that dog who just goes around brutally murdering them? As well as that, the world the satanic dog lives in is nasty. The people and animals are all equally evil. It's just, where's the respite? Where is anything to laugh at in this horror? Mr. Pickles is nothing more than a cruel, grotesque, painful to watch experiment. An experiment that went horribly wrong. Number 2. 12-ounce mouse. I originally thought Microsoft Paint was a program we only ever used when we were trying to kill 5 minutes. I just wanted to try out that cool spray paint function of a bunch of sticks and circles. But apparently, Cartoon Network now considers it a legitimate tool for animation. And boxes of cardboard are considered legitimate 3D. Which brings us to 12-ounce mouse. Just wow. This kind of animation could only make it onto Adult Swim when they think absolutely no one is watching. I never pictured a professional animation studio to be this lazy with their animation, with their everything, and the dialogue actually managed to have less effort put into it than the animation.
Can I help you? What do? I do it all. Let's see.
What?
I will, because that's something I can do. Do something.
What?
And what's worse is, I think it's actually trying to be funny. I mean, they did include long, awkward silences. Clearly they thought something would get a laugh out of these jokes. No, they're not jokes, they're just awkward dialogue. There is no deeper meaning behind any of this. They were just being lazy and doing whatever popped into their head. And only a stoned executive would have greenlit this. Did the creators actually find this funny or even remotely interesting? More to the point, how did they expect fully cognitively functioning adults to not find this terrible?
Oh my god. It sounds like, yeah, I'm not saying, it sounds like somebody had to be, like, really, like, into, like, the weed stages of their life
And more than anything else,
in order to make that.
I can safely say, this is one of the most stupid shows I've ever seen, and I felt stupid for watching it. Don't make the same mistake I did. I do not recommend this show. I thought the 12-ounce mouse was the worst, but it turns out there was one experiment by Cartoon Network that was even worse. But it was very quickly hidden away due to abysmally low ratings in the first few episodes. And believe it or not, it was designed for kids. And the number 1 worst Cartoon Network show of all time is The High Fructose Adventures of the Annoying Orange.
Oh god. Does anybody even like The Annoying Orange, like, consensually watches this show?
Well, in case you don't know about it, there's this highly annoying, painfully popular channel on YouTube known as The Annoying Orange. Based on their views, a lot of people like this show, somehow. But personally, I loathe it. The squealing voice, the uncanny, creepy mouths on the fruit, the laziness of the design. I despise it. So hey, our old favorite executive decided, let's give the creator his own TV time slot on Cartoon Network. Let me give you 3 seconds of the first pilot episode to give you an idea of just how unbelievably brain dead this cartoon is.
Percival, I thought you said your name was Broccoli.
I think it was meant to be a joke. I mean, he cackled inanely at the end. That probably means other people were expected to laugh. The only marginally tolerable part that doesn't make me want to gouge my eyes out is the only human actor in the show. Probably because I was so horrified by the tongue-lolling abomination horror fest in front of me. Nickelodeon may have given us breadwinners, but this is in a league of its own aggravating. You can watch 10 frames and be disgusted. Every 5 seconds of the show is a new violation of my senses. Every time this thing talks, I just want it to die. If at least one executive wasn't fired for this show, there is no justice in this world. There is no justice in a world where this show is allowed to be on primetime TV. There's a small section of YouTube that is made up of people who get devastatingly, tragically large amount of views by screaming into their webcam. I can safely say these small parts of YouTube do not belong on public broadcast. This is the show I can watch for 4 seconds before his half destroying my speakers forces me to close my browser in fury. The worst of Cartoon Network's cartoons is better than this by far. At least there's some creative consideration there, even if it's bad. At least there's original animation. But jeepers, I know there's a crowd for this show, but I am certainly not in that crowd. And I just don't personally understand how this show can appeal to people. Hearing this guy's squealy voice gives me a migraine. It makes me want to destroy every orange I see after listening to this ear-piercing garbage.
I just takes a shotgun and destroys cuties.
Acknowledgements the Cartoon Network made this show. They made the show and it bombed. Thank God. And they buried it away where they hoped no one would ever find it. And thank you, Internet. Thank you, world, for letting the annoying orange not extend its garbage beyond YouTube. I think I have a little more faith in humanity, purely because this show bombed. It is the ugliest, most incredibly annoying, fury-inducing Cartoon Network show I have ever watched. It is an easy choice for the #1 worst Cartoon Network show of all time. Unfortunately, for most of these shows, Cartoon Network is clearly ashamed of them and tends to draw as little attention to them as possible. Most of these shows only have tiny time slots, or are almost impossible to find. And honestly, there's only a very small, or very young, dedicated crowd for these shows. Most of the time, Cartoon Network shows deserve a silver or gold medal, as their shows continue to inspire me.
I'm alright.
Do you think I missed a particularly bad one? I know there's a couple of key bad ones that didn't quite make the list, so feel free to let me know in the comments. And as always, thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.
Top 10 worst animated Disney
Today
movies?
you're facing tough choices. Do
Or
you
top
side with
10 worst
shareholders
Disney
or side
movies?
by customers? Shareholders or customers? Yes. Do both with the intelligent platform for digital business. The world works with ServiceNow.
Extra, extra, one of the largest auto groups in the Midwest just got bigger. The Bob LaCruz.
It's time to
Ant-Man Mulan. I don't remember much from it, but what I do remember, it was an absolute blast. I enjoyed that movie.
To make this list, it has to be more than just a mediocre Disney flick. It has to be annoying, insultingly stupid, sickly sweet, or just plain bad. No! In our onslaught of Disney bombs, direct DVDs will not be spared. If Disney's logo's on it, it's allowed on this list. So let's take a look back at the top 10 worst Disney movies of all time. As always, if you do like these shows, that's great. It's just my silly personal opinion. And it's great that you can enjoy something that I can't. Anyway, on to the countdown. Number 10. Mulan 2. Oh,
2. Let's say the first one was pretty good.
it's among my favorite Disney movies of all time. I know it wasn't that aesthetically perfect, but I always just got so absorbed in the Chinese atmosphere, the setting, the characters, Mulan's struggle. I really liked it all. So it really hit me hard when I watched Mulan 2. Take all that character development from Mulan and Mushu. Now, turn Mushu into the most petty, tiny-brained, shallow, selfish creature, and that's it. This time, Mushu's our villain, because he's trying to keep Mulan and Shang apart from marrying.
I haven't left my post.
And I suppose you weren't gossiping about me with the princesses.
Are we really going this route? Surely we can come up with a better premise than this. Here, I'll do one for you right now. Why not bring that ruthless Hun Shan Yu back as a ghost? Then, Shan possesses the Emperor and forces all of China into a state of moral disarray and public unrest, forcing children to question the very foundation of the positive morals Disney films so often invoke. Okay, I've got a bit carried away, but you probably get my point. Any of us can come up with a much more compelling sequel in 10 seconds than Mulan 2. Surely, the champion of China, who single-handedly defeated an entire Han army by herself and was offered to be the freaking Emperor's personal guard, would have a slightly more interesting story than this. The only thing I kind of liked was seeing Mulan's 3 army buddies return. They get these lovely girlfriends who are just the sweetest things.
Daddy, oh, look how great you're doing. Thank you.
Couldn't they have made this movie about these three couples? It's far more enjoyable to watch them. Mulan 2 is
Sorry.
a tragically bad sequel to one of my favorite Disney movies of all time. And the
Yay!
songs.
I saved
Oh
him.
God, the songs.
I will save you, baby. Come here, buddy.
Imagine the Jonas Brothers, High School Musical, and Justin Bieber all mashed together into one 90-minute unholy wild tweed mush. That is the Teen Beach Movie.
I can't take live action Disney.
Pandering teen dramas is Disney gonna pump out? I can just read the plot summary, and that alone makes me groan. Two surfing lovers whose doomed relationship is nearing to a close find themselves magically in a film of West Side Story. This movie makes no attempt to make sense. All it managed to do was make me squirm in discomfort for 90 minutes. At least Shake It Up was over in 20 minutes. I'd take pee breaks for this one, followed by crying in the mirror at the sad state of modern entertainment. And the movie will just randomly burst into song, seemingly for no rhyme or reason, other than to desperately attempt to fill a 90-minute runtime with some flashy dancing, something they hope will relate to.
You should make like the ocean and wave goodbye.
You should make like the ocean and wave goodbye. I've heard some dumb
Oh God.
It's real.
There is a. I gotta say there was a big tree right here.
Teams just keep going. I mean, most of the teams I know would only enjoy this if each of these guys was getting kicked in the groin or in a skateboard accident. This one's pretty high on the list because, honestly, the main two teen actors aren't terrible. They're not great, but Brady and Mackenzie are still a lot better than a lot of the Disney Channel teen actors. Teen Beach Movie just reeks of so many stereotypes. It just feels like one of those big, massive marketing conglomerates. And I think I can definitely recommend to skip it.
Someone, won't you make it stop?
Number 8. Mars Needs Moms.
Oh boy. Whew. Oh, here we go. We're kicking off with a good one too.
CG isn't endearing, it's terrifying. This movie has some of the most disturbing looking CG I've ever seen. In fact, it's so squarely in the uncanny valley, the aliens actually look more like humans than the Earthlings do. Ah, stop moving! Any movements in these bizarre organisms look like something out of a David Lynch horror movie. They look like waxy, dead-eyed mannequins come to life by satanic rituals. And the scripting in this is just some of the most sterile, dull, cut-out lines I've ever heard. I don't know if it's just the animation doing it, but the delivery coming from these abominations of nature just seems wrong somehow.
It is awesome.
Wait, what? A world of trash in... How is a world of trash in any way awesome? That's the most forced whimsical line in this entire movie. It's not even whimsical. Why is there whimsical music playing? It looks like he's standing in the fires of hell. How is this even remotely whimsical? Did no one in the Disney production studio ever look at what they were making and say, hey, this CG looks like it belongs in a zombie horror. Maybe we should just do it live action. Most of the backgrounds are these ugly, crack-colored browns, greens, or so dark you can't actually make out what you're meant to be looking at. This one's also pretty high on the list because, despite the disturbing, uncanny CG, the ideas behind things like the alien civilization are kind of creative. I mean, the movie's surreal, nonsensical, and is better used as a paperweight. The points for trying. The story's painfully predictable, any whimsy is forced down your throat, and the characters are all as bland as tofu. And it is just hideous to look at. Mars Needs Moms wasn't needed by anyone. And the seventh worst is Beauty and the Beast, Belle's Magical World. I think they meant to name it Belle and Beast's mind-numbingly stupid dinner quarrels, but I guess Belle's Magical World rolls off the tongue a little bit better. Get this amazing plot. Beast acts like a petty jerk and upsets Belle at the dinner table. I'm hyped. While the original Beauty and the Beast is among probably the 3 greatest Disney movies of all time, this sequel just repeatedly shat on it. And the arguments these two have are just so brainlessly petty and stupid. I think Beast opened a drafty window to try and get rid of Belle or something, and then Belle called Beast rude, I think? I swear there have been more intelligent partner quarrels with Barbie and Ken dolls. So then they forgive each other when Beast writes a letter of an apology. Then literally 2 seconds after, Belle gets annoyed at Beast for crunching peanuts too loud.
Then drew herself up courageously for the journey ahead. Do you like it so far?
Keep reading.
Do something!
No, I just can't.
I'm only 10 minutes in, too. There's another 80 minutes left of this thing. Oh, then it turns out Beast didn't write the letter and apologize. Oh god, it just keeps going like this, doesn't it? As well as that, the animation looks like it was done on a 2-cent budget. Belle's magical world is stupid, awkward, tedious beyond belief, and craps on one of the greatest Disney movies of all time. It is so insultingly petty and simplistic that I find the original movie less good after watching this. Then I think the Duster gets seasonal affective disorder and Belle decides to throw it a party, resulting in talking oven gloves? Oh, Jesus. I can't take it anymore. Light it up. And for number 6, Home on the Range.
Home on the Range.
Walt must be spinning in his grave. Where to start with this vile thing? The animation is tacky, and the writing could only be appreciated by those who can't count past 2 on their fingers. Every aspect of this show will be unappealing in some way to those over 4. It took me right back to that traumatic place that was Fanboy and Chum Chum, where they've made no effort to make coherent
Oh, it looks like the Barnyard ripoff.
They're all just that sickly, happy, insincere flavor. It's just, ugh. This was one I knew from the start would, of course, be on the list. I can't think of how Disney could have lowered the bar further apart from making an outright Barney the Dinosaur movie. And they actually had some real voice talents in here. And the odd thing is, it has some scenes that really aren't suitable for its young child demographic. A horse causes massive head trauma to a guy, and he draws a freaking knife. 'Cause that's a good message to children. When you're in danger, draw a knife. Generally, when I hear people talk about this show, they tend to call this the big decline in Disney movies. This was when Disney movies were their absolute worst, and that's definitely understandable. Home on the Range is just lazy, and it's far below what we've come to expect from Disney.
Yeah, they're real. Quit staring.
And for number 5, Planes. One of the biggest...
Yeah, this one, I tried to like this one, but I couldn't. I mean, I don't really hate it, but I just don't really like it. It's kind of forgettable. Actually, no, it's really forgettable.
When Disney saw how profitable thoughtless garbage like Cars 1 and 2 had made Pixar, they thought, screw our reputation. Let's make a crappy movie purely to sell merchandise. I mean, it's only kids, right? What do they know? And so the best phrase I've heard for this movie is, it's a passable diversion for under 10s. This movie is just so void of originality, and the concept is just so stupid. They're just walking planes. There's no cleverness behind why they talk or how they talk. They just talk. And our hero is a plane that is afraid of heights. Well, what do you think's gonna happen? Do you think he's gonna believe in himself and magically manage to get over his fear of heights? Is there anything else that could possibly happen in this predictable garbage heap? The only plus is, as you've probably noticed, it's visually pleasing in that artificial CG overly shiny toys kind of way. It was almost like they were designing it to market toys for children rather than actually make a good movie. I'd expect this kind of cash grab from Michael Bay, but we tend to expect more of an animation studio that is nearly a century old and prides itself on making amazing family movies. The characters just talk and talk endlessly.
Really? How hard is this? Fly straight. Turn around. Fly straight.
If I tune out from boredom from listening to these guys as an adult, how is someone under 10 not meant to be kicking the seat in front of them 30 seconds in? The plot is as weak as water. The lines and writing are as dull as dishwater. It's purely a bland load of tofu that was interesting only to entertainers, purely for its colourful visuals. And the fourth worst is G-Force. Bad CG guinea pigs. And
That's the only thing that's good about this. The only good thing about this movie, guinea pigs. That's it. That's her go. I mean, I love guinea pigs, but
just falls flat on its face. Some shoddy movies will insert whatever flavor of the month pop singer was popular at the time into their movies. G-Force does this over 13 times. Every time I think I'm getting slightly immersed in this movie, some annoying pop singer jars the experience by breaking into song out of nowhere, often singing right over the top of the actual characters. I go to Disney movies to escape the mainstream obsession with Lady Gaga and Flo Rida. Couldn't they have spent some of that $150 million budget on their own orchestrated music? Or did it all go into royalties to Flo Rida? Everything in G-Force feels like it's ticking some box for the shareholders to assure it appeals to mainstream. Look, a guinea pig playing DDR. That was popular in 2005, right? Look, that guinea pig's on Facebook. That's popular, right? This is just Disney's outright equivalent to Smurfs or Alvin and the Chipmunks. And it's so obnoxiously loud. Half the time guinea pigs will be yelling about something and they'll be so generic I won't even notice what they're saying. I'll just feel more annoyed afterwards for some reason. G-Force has unlikable characters, is annoying, feels like a corporate scheme to empty your wallet. It represents all the Alvin and the Chipmunks, all those damn Smurf movies. It is just a watered-down, annoying computer graphics garbage heap. And number 3, Inspector Gadget 2. Blah!
what is it?
Someone at Disney is clearly
Oh boy, I already know where this is going.
Like this just seem to be made purely to sabotage
3, 1.
The original Inspector Gadget movie was panned for being a drab load of bile. The effects were terrible. The main character gave an incredibly dull performance, and the story made no sense. It was just a mess. So they decided to make a sequel, because they thought, hey, our last movie was only boring. Let's make this one both boring and insulting. Let's make it actively assault all the senses of our viewers at once. Instead of Matthew Broderick, let's have Fred Stewart, responsible for such stellar Disney performances as Chihuahua from Beverly Hills Chihuahua 2. Yet somehow this movie still managed to be the biggest copy stain on his resume. What did the director say to this guy? Okay, that's not French. By the time this movie ends, the audience should hear it. And I'm absolutely despised so French pulling over an old lady for going 0.3 miles per hour over the speed limit. Sheesh, what a charming guy. And he forcefully I thought you call me Inspector. Oh, look at that. He's sticking his nose up at Penny, telling her he must refer to him by his rank. What a lovable, relatable character. Inspector Gadget 2 is a loud, irritating, unlikable, relentless, seizure-inducing, ugly fest that wasn't just forgettable like the original.
It looks like the Mask, but even more awful.
And for number 2, Hannah Montana the movie. I hate Hannah Montana so much. Imagine all the garbage of Disney Channel, all the lousy teenagers, all the terrible writing, all the food pop songs, all the formulaic manipulative stories, into one big ultimate cinema cow pie. Miley Cyrus. How do networks continually expect us to root for these unlikable, arrogant, over-entitled, spoiled teens anyway? I mean, Miley is self-absorbed, she throws tantrums, and is painfully materialistic. She dresses trashy, insults the intelligence of teens, writes one of the stupidest, most formulaic, manipulative songs I've ever heard. There's just nothing to like here. I just get so tired of these twisted morals behind Hannah Montana. This ugly underlying theme of, to be happy you must immerse yourself in consumerism and become a completely self-absorbed pop singer. I've gone on about Hannah Montana before in my top 10 worst Disney Channel, so I'll leave it at, it's a Hannah Montana movie. Think of all the worst aspects of the Disney Channel, and then compile that into one movie. There's no forgiving this one, Disney. It's yet another shameless cash grab and an attempt to manipulate a very fragile, multiple demographic. Shame on you, Disney. Shame.
I hate these characters are like always like trying to be spoiled the crap.
Before we get to number one, I'd like to give a few quick honorable mentions. The Black Cauldron. I couldn't put it on the list purely because the animation in this one was beautiful, traditional Disney style. And ideas like the Horned King are just wonderful things. Cinderella 2. Sure, it's a bad, shoddy, tacky, direct-to-DVD sequel, but I've just always been in love with Jennifer Hallay's voice.
Are you sure this isn't just a dream?
So I couldn't hate this movie because she plays Cinderella, and Trez MacNeille gives a lovely performance as always too. Sure, they're working with zero writing, but they still make it pleasant enough. Lion King 1.5. Damn it, I wanted to make fun of this show, but you know what? It's actually really funny. All the way from gets a lot of flack. I honestly didn't think it was that bad. Obviously, the African Americans being slaves is an unpleasant product of the times. But aside from that, hey, we get Deputy Doodah in this movie. It's not good, but I don't think it quite deserves a place on this list. And with those said,
Now this is no great. Experience more with $300 travel credit at Chase Sapphire Missouri.
here we go. And the number one worst Disney movie is...
I've heard a lot about this one. This is the act. Huh.
This has so much hate, so much mean.
Okay, unpopular opinion, I actually kind of like this. Okay. That's hate me, ratio me. I have my opinion. I will say it does have a few problems with it.
Disney movie, but it felt like Family Guy. Imagine a magical world run by backstabbing, shallow, cruel.
I will say, yeah, the characters, like how they're mean, they're just kind of annoying. Like they're just mean to be mean.
Terrible idea from Disney. But to add icing to that brown, shapely pile we're forming, they decided to make the father.
The father is so neglectful.
Isn't that just charming? I mean, look at this. Freaking Box is the main character mooning us. This movie just does everything it can to insult you. And on top of that, this movie is so ugly. This was Disney's first attempt at a CG movie. It was pleasant to look at.
I love this.
But Chicken Little has easily the most unappealing color scheme I've ever seen in a Disney movie. 4 minutes into the movie, and the character's already been shunned and physically assaulted by the town. Why is he being treated like some sort of war criminal? What did he do, you ask? Mass arsony? Genocide? No, worse than that. He mistakenly claimed that the sky was falling. Okay, first off, why would an entire town actually believe that the sky was falling? Did no one just, I don't know, look up and say, oh wait, no it isn't? Secondly, on Earth would someone get bad publicity for the rest of their life claiming that the sky was falling? The movie is then set a year later, and the entire town is still abusing him. How the hell is this a Disney movie? I mean, the school teacher makes dodgeball games about ganging up on and hitting all the unpopular kids. So we get to watch helpless children getting the crap beaten out of them. That's just lovely.
Run.
No, get rid of the nice music. This is the nastiest Disney movie I've ever watched.
Dude, Run just gets it so bad.
In the street. And I again would like to reiterate, this is a Disney movie. The jokes are all cringeworthy. None of them hit. It's most stupid, cruel, ugly, nasty, boring.
Yeah, what if I do that?
I've ever watched. For Jesus' sake, don't show this one to kids. It has the worst messages I've ever seen in a Disney movie. Shun, attack, abuse the unpopular, and praise the popular. I can tolerate Disney cheese. I can even sometimes tolerate their cutesy sappy moments and the tweeny cash grabs. But there was no excuse for something like
Someone come to my stairs.
I personally consider Chicken Little the absolute worst Disney movie.
I'm very surprised by that.
But I had to look
I'm
really hard to find these
very
outright
surprised.
terrible Disney movies. With a few exceptions, Disney normally gives us fresh, new ideas and stories, or a genius retelling an old story. Disney has given us masterpieces that were so revolutionary for their time. They could have closed
101 Dalmatians, easily.
ago, but instead they have been endlessly improving their art.
And Big Hero 6. And Zootopia. Those are some good freaking movies. Those are good. Okay, and although it's weird, speaking unbiasedly, I'm not a fan of princess movies, but, like, honestly, from a critic's point of perspective, when we were on the bus, a charter bus, to go to our trip to Go Ape National Park, not National Park, Go Ape Park, they put on Rapunzel, I'm like, oh my god. Because I'm like, dude, this movie has some of the best CGI for its time. Well, it was released like 2012. How good the CGI was, even back then, like, that's insane. Like, that just shows that Disney knew how to do stuff with their money. No, they just made these stupid ripoffs, like, not ripoffs, they just make all these stupid sequels and live actions today, man.
Occasionally, I'm so glad we still have Disney. Do you think I missed a few particularly bad ones? I know there's a few that didn't quite make the list, so feel free to let me know in the comments. And, as always, thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.
Ten fast food staff never order.
There's nothing.
That kind of reminds me, because I don't work fast food, because my restaurant I work at is not a fast food restaurant. But we do. When I order, I always order chicken. Okay, listen. If you're ever, God, the restaurant I work at, they make the best chicken ever. I don't care. It's better than McDonald's, Culver's. It's better than any other chicken I've ever tasted combined. You want me to fight? I will fight, and I will die on that hill. I will die with pride on that hill. They have some of the best chicken ever. I love their chicken. And I'm going to be so sad when I want to move away to Wisconsin.
Powerful than you. Making your thing happen. Really going for it.
Howdy. When it comes to fast food, I believe there is one source we can absolutely trust. Obviously not the commercials, but the overworked, underpaid employees making the food. They have nothing to hide. So let's look at 10 fast foods the staff say we should never order. And just a reminder, I'm not personally saying I think you should never order these foods. These are just the opinions of some fast food employees, certainly not all.
I don't have any food that I would never order in my restaurant. I haven't tasted it, so I can't give you an accurate representation.
KFC and Domino's. But still, take this list with a grain of salt. Anyway, time's a waste. Let's begin. For our entree is number 10. KFC potato and gravy. Fun facts, back when I used to work at KFC, I was often assigned to make potato and gravy. But I've heard the process grosses out some people, so I've rarely ever explained how it's made to anyone else. Particularly since a lot of people enjoy potato and gravy. But some KFC staff swear off potato and gravy after they see the process of making it. Some staff have even shocked customers just explaining the recipe. Happy 8 Day is a KFC worker. He summed it up pretty well in his comments.
KFC gravy is just the bottom of the deep fryer with seasoning in it.
Well, yeah, that's about it. The process of how it's made is demonstrated well in this TikTok video. Basically, we start by gathering up the leftovers from the bottom of the chicken fryer, also known as chicken drippings or crackling. Basically, the bits of chicken fat and bone left over in the deep fryer. You fill that it's crackling with water and potato powder, and that's about it. Heat it up, and voila, KFC potato and gravy. When this TikTok hit the internet, some people were really put off KFC's potato and gravy. In fact, anonymous still was made, but KFC spoke out about their signature gravy recipes in News Corp.
Our famous mouth-watering gravy is made the old-fashioned way, and is another one of the Colonel's famous recipes. We proudly serve it to our customers.
It may sound disgusting to some people, But interestingly, this is how gravy has been made for hundreds of years. And a lot of commenters pointed this out too. Personally, if I use gravy, I tend to just use instant gravy mix. So I've never seen this traditional cooking
I don't like
process
gravy.
at KFC, but
Oh my god. Ugh. My school had hot lunch. If you don't know, my school, we had cold lunch and hot lunch. I think of the, like, let's see, Alexa. We killed her. We actually unplugged her. Let's see, whatever 180 times at least 13 is, I can tell you I've probably eaten a hot lunch at least, let's see, probably about less than 10 or 15 times. I tried the fries there, and they were absolutely nasty. And this isn't toward, apparently the chicken was soggy. The food was so bad, it'd make Gordon Ramsay want to jump off a building. I don't really think it's the, I don't really want to blame the lunch ladies because they have to cook food for 100 people. I don't really blame them. And plus the food from the service is bad. Plus, you know, this is the post-Obama administration where all the food was made literally healthy. So yeah, I don't really blame them. Man, what happened to high school lunches, dude? They are so bad.
It's done by Gordon Ramsay in what he called the ultimate gravy mix. And like KFC, he used the leftover chicken drippings. And if even Gordon Ramsay can't make it classy, I think gravy is just gross by nature. But many customers and workers don't care at all. For example, in my own community, Hypersonic Editor said,
I worked at KFC and their potatoes slap. I know how they're cooked, but that gravy can't be beat.
Look, not my thing personally, but more power to you if you like it. Number 9. Decaf coffee. Oh, I can attest to this one. I'm no stranger to ordering decaf coffee. In fact, Lynn and I often enjoy going down to the food court to order a decaf and have a nice quick business meeting. But when it comes to fast food joints, can we actually trust what we're getting is actually decaf? You'd think when you order a decaf coffee, you get a decaf coffee, but sometimes you don't. But it really depends where you go. For a time at McDonald's, the elusive decaf coffee went incognito. Turns out the decaf was such a rare order that they didn't even bother featuring it on the menu. But then in 2020, decaf was meant to come back onto the menu at McDonald's. Regarding this, a spokesman from McDonald's said,
The tastes of our customers are diversifying, and the demand for decaffeinated drinks is increasing. So we now would like to offer you decaf coffee. Yay!
But unfortunately, many McDonald's weren't so keen to bother to diversify, and employees soon spilled the beans, the coffee beans. According to How Nation, Burger King doesn't bother brewing any decaf coffee. At How Nation's restaurant, he said,
If someone orders decaf, management trains us to water down regular coffee. Yeah!
And I've also
What?
experienced this firsthand at McDonald's. I don't have caffeine myself, I run on anxiety.
That's rough, buddy.
But once I was out at 8 p.m. and ordered a large decaf latte, I was instead given a large triple shot latte. Macca's didn't even bother to tell me they didn't even serve decaf. They didn't even water it down for me. And have you ever tried giving a triple caffeine shot to someone who doesn't drink caffeine?
Oh, now I'm sad.
It was ugly, man.
Yeah,
Needless
sure.
to say, I've never ordered decaf coffee at a fast food joint again. Hopefully you won't have the same experience, but I can't say I or some other staff ever recommend you order a decaf.
This is Fast Twitch, a new energy drink from Gatorade. 200 milligrams of caffeine, electrolytes, and
We serve food here, sir.
And number 8.
Fast food beans.
Fast food beans. When I asked my own community what fast food staff never order, one particular choice came up more than anything else. Staff working at Taco Bell said they never order Taco Bell beans. It's one of my favorite condiments on my Taco Bell bowl with no mayo. But so many staff complained about the Taco Bell beans. One staff member named Tam and Dragon said,
I don't ever eat anything with beans from Taco Bell. Let's just say it's easy to prep.
Then Wiki Cookie Dreamer commented,
My hubby used to work at Taco Hell. He said to avoid the bean burrito and anything with shredded chicken.
Then Gavin chimed in.
Taco Bell here. I don't order anything related to beans. They can get so old. When not stirred, they get this gross film on them. Most of the stuff at the Bell is fine, but I stay away from the beans.
Then TJ chimed in too. Their comment was,
I worked at Taco Bell and pellets that we add boiling water to. It somehow becomes something resembling beans.
wait, that's it? That's a controversy? It's just dried beans that become regular beans when hydrated? Oh, come on, that doesn't sound so bad. Despite so many Taco Bell employees complaining about them, no one actually fully explained to me what was wrong with the beans, so I investigated. I managed to find a TikTok video exposing Taco Bell's beans recipe, but I was pretty underwhelmed. I could be wrong, but it appears the staff were upset about what TJ mentioned, that the refried beans are dehydrated when packaged and then boiled. But based on the comments of this video, it seems to bother more staff than customers. For example, one of the highest comments was from Mallory. She said,
You can buy beans like this at food supply stores too. It's not new. They're just dehydrated, refried beans.
and I completely agree. Astronauts would rely heavily on this dehydration process, and they need every nutrient they can get.
And it's like magic. Dried spinach, spinach ready to eat.
It doesn't make the food bad just because the water's taken out and put back in. It's just more efficient and more hygienic for a conglomerate. After all, water can lead to mold and bacteria. Honestly, if you can taste something different about the beans, you've got a better taste palate than I. But in my opinion, beans are one of the healthiest things you can get in a fast food menu. So for Pete's sake, don't restrict yourself from beans just because of how they're prepared. And number 7, Subway tuna. Many people are quite familiar with the tuna sandwich. I've certainly ordered it before. Tuna itself is a very healthy fish, packed with protein and good fats. Fish itself is the most vitamin-packed, healthy protein you can have. So why don't Subway employees eat the tuna sandwich? Well, according to a Subway employee named Karma Virus,
Tuna sandwiches, 80% mayonnaise.
its biggest problem with the tuna is that it wasn't tuna, or maybe 20% tuna. His bigger problem was the copious amounts of mayonnaise that morsel of tuna was swimming in. And personally, my stomach doesn't handle mayonnaise well, and I've struggled with Subway tuna for this very reason. I get this because when I order a tuna sandwich, I want tuna, not a mayonnaise sandwich. In my own personal experience working at Subway, it wasn't 80% mayonnaise, more like 50% mayonnaise on my shift. But nowadays I can't stand mayonnaise, so I just skip it altogether. The situation against Subway got a lot worse, though, when there was a lawsuit against them for their tuna. And this lawsuit was from an ex-Subway employee. Wow, he really didn't like the tuna. They claimed that the tuna Subway used had no trace of fish at all. 0%. That's a bold claim. Plaintiff Armin said,
Subway had completely misled customers with their claim of 100% tuna. I don't like it.
Armin even went to the trouble of getting this Subway tuna tested for tuna DNA. Their findings were that in 19 out of 20 samples, absolutely no tuna DNA sequences were discovered. But there were
So what was it made out of?
DNA, such as chicken and pork. Is that for real? I mean, though, cross-contamination isn't a big surprise. In busy times, I have seen sandwich makers drop food from one bin to another in a rush to make many orders in a row. But containing zero fish was definitely more of a surprise. Following the filing of this lawsuit, jokes on social media inevitably began popping up. Jessica Simpson is apparently known for not knowing the difference between chicken and tuna.
I know it's tuna, but it says chicken.
She tweeted,
It's okay, Subway. It is confusing.
and a staff member from my community had a similar sentiment on the tuna. Stephen Evergreen said,
I used to work for Subway, and I do not order the tuna. It's not actually tuna. It's just a soy product.
in all of the uproar, Subway finally released a statement to the New York Times. Their statement was,
There is simply no truth to the California allegations. Subway delivers 100% cooked tuna to its restaurants, which is mixed with mayonnaise.
yeah, like 50 to 80% mayonnaise. Personally, I think how much mayonnaise is used will vary a lot to. For example, this staff member named Subway used a lot less mayonnaise than others, while these staff seem to be trying to cause customers death by mayonnaise. Anyway, soy, chicken, or tuna, I think Subway should at least be clear on what food they're giving their customers.
Google Ads helps you turn curiosity into customers who are interested in what your business has to offer. Now you can reach people based on what matters most to them at just the right moment. Google Ads. Turn curiosity into customers. Visit ads.google.com to learn more.
Are you on a family trip?
No, sorry, son. Price is crazy.
Aww.
Tastes like chicken.
Number 6. Baseball stadium hot dogs. America is known for some interesting national prides, and one of the more unusual ones to me is baseball. In fact, it's one of the top 5 most popular sports in America. Now, dump the title. This isn't a new top list. Who would watch that? Anyway, it seems many Americans remember going to the ballpark, watching their favorite team, munching on a nice foot-long hot dog. So why would I be stupid enough to bring baseballs and hot dogs into this list? Well, staff seem less concerned how they're manufactured, and more concerned how they're stored. Let's go behind the scenes to our happy little hot dogs in their package. They're grilled, and they're popped into water to keep warm when ordered. But staff member claim this water can be days or even weeks old. You could say these employees have spilled water. Did you write that? Yeah, keep trying. Anyway, in an article from MinQ, one employee said,
Stadium hot dogs are kept hydrated in warm water at the stadium. Any unsold dogs, and water for that matter, are kept in the fridge ready for the next event.
There was another review from Freaky Cheese Man on Reddit, and with a name like Freaky Cheese Man, how can we not trust him? He said,
Don't buy the hot dogs. They make it out of the package fine, and they're probably still edible when we grill them. But once they hit the water, who knows how old the water is? We try to put our foot down and throw it out after 3 days, but management tells us not to.
So yeah, according to some staff, this delightful meaty treat could have been sitting in month-old water by the time it's served to you. 1 day, 1 month, who knows? But if I may give my personal opinion, who freaking cares? Technically, all the water we drink is recycled. In fact, every glass of water we have is 3.8 billion years old.
Yep.
It's just been recycled and cleaned for our drinking. So as long as it's clean water with no bacteria, who really cares how old it is? Technically, we're drinking the same water as the dinosaurs were 230 million years ago. Who really cares if it's a day or a month old? Besides, if the hot dog water is sufficiently hot, wouldn't any bacteria be killed off anyway?
Well, according to the Department of Health, boiling water does seem to indeed kill bacteria.
If that's the case, it may as well be new water. Personally, I think if stadium hot dogs haven't given you any stomach aches so far, you're perfectly fine to enjoy them in moderation. They don't help any bugs, and their potential likely to poison you. And for number 5, hot box food. Yeah, I remember hot box food working at Domino's. Once we cooked your pizza, it was cut, boxed up, and put into the hot box to keep warm until you picked it up. The same thing is done with other fast food joints like a KFC. But what happens to food that's been in the hot box for too long? According to USDA food standards, takeaway food that's been cooked should be kept in an internal temperature of 140 degrees Fahrenheit, or 60 degrees Celsius or above, or 333 Kelvin. And anything that's been in the hot box for too long needs to be discarded. But staff claim that some of this hot box food has been reheated. There was one source that told Reader's Digest,
After we cook something, we put it in the hot box and set a timer. When the timer goes off, we are meant to throw it out, but management tells us to reheat it instead.
and this doesn't surprise me that much. This happens sometimes. I remember I used to pick up a quick feed from my local shopping centre, and sometimes the fries in the hot box would be hard and chewy. Many times I wondered how many hours the chips had been sitting there. Anyway, this staff member went on to say,
For the precious food, it's best to visit between 11 p.m. and 1 p.m. for lunch, between 6 p.m. and 8 p.m. for dinner. This is the busiest times, so it is more likely your food will be fresh.
I remember managing hot box food for my own service station and pizza days. Our hot box box food did have strict times we had to throw it out. But sometimes when we're busy, we did forget to throw it out. But I didn't serve these forgotten pizzas to customers. Many of our customers could tell when a pizza was more than an hour old, and were more than happy to tell us if a pizza didn't taste fresh. And I found customers were angry enough as is with late pizzas, so I generally try to cook them as fresh a pizza as possible. And I always kept my hot box food at the service station a strict 65 degrees Celsius or 149 Fahrenheit. And bacteria is killed above 60 degrees Celsius, so you're very unlikely to get food poisoning from all hot box food. But it might taste a bit chewier and more bland, and you definitely deserve better. But personally, in my experience, I always tried my very best to give you something fresh. Yeah. Number 4. Fast food chili. If you ask Wendy's customers, many will agree that chili is a great comfort food. Going back nearly 50 years, Wendy's chili has been an old favorite. But when you ask Wendy's staff, some will tell you their chili is a no-go. But why don't staff like their chili? Well, originally, Dave Thomas, Wendy's creator, didn't intend to have chili on the menu at all. His plan was just to sell burgers, fries, and frosty desserts. But the chili just kind of happened. You see, Dave started making burgers with a mission to only use fresh meat. In fact, he proudly stated this.
Since day one, we've been serving up our fresh, never frozen hamburgers. No frozen pucks or pre-cooked patties here, unlike what the other guys are serving up.
Take a tour of a
They always like to insult other people.
Ensure your small business with a fellow small business owner. Talk to an agent today.
I'm literally...
You might ask, what does this have to do with chili? Well, in a lunch rush at a fast food joint, many burgers have to be cooked in advance. This ensures the lines keep moving and the burgers are ready to go. But at the end of the rush, what do they do with all the leftovers? Yep, it's leftover meat burger patties that are Wendy's famous chili. Now, honestly, to me, this doesn't sound so bad. I think it's a clever way to save on wasting fresh meat. But it's not like you scrape the patty off a half-eaten burger to reuse in the chili. It's not even a health concern to use this meat in another dish. Parents might do this as well, so their kids can have a nice protein dinner the next day. So why do staff have a problem with this? Apparently it's not the meat itself, but preparing after. A former employee and Reddit user, Cosmo23, said,
They take the leftover patties and put them in a bin. They are then stored in the fridge until they make chili. They then boil it, chop it up, and dump it in the chili.
Apparently this process isn't just used at Wendy's, but other fast food joints as well. I also found comments from a former Checkers employee named Duct Tape Chainsaw. I didn't think his name tag said that, but anyway, he said,
I would never, in a bazillion years, eat fast food chili. It's basically just the past few days unsold burger meat cooked into a chili. Not to mention, the chili was never actually thrown out. It was just replenished with the next batch. So in reality, you could be eating last month's meat.
Hey, did I throw up in your bathroom?
this was just at one local Wendy's, though. Hopefully your local Wendy's does follow health guidelines and throws out the leftover patties often. And I don't see any health risks to chili, particularly when the meat is refrigerated and boiled after to kill any bacteria. I guess some people just find chili kind of gross. And next up we've got number 3, the Fill-A-Dough-Fish. For some reason, everyone seems to have something against this poor fish burger. Mash claimed it was the one McDonald's item that staff never order. Even McDonald's themselves advertised it as killing a British kid's dad in one of their banned commercials. I mean, it was the dad's favourite menu item. Even the former McDonald's CEO, Ray Kroc, notoriously disliked the Fill-A-Dough-Fish and tried to replace it with a pineapple burger instead. But it may not surprise you that Ray's pineapple burger did not sell as well as the Fill-A-Dough-Fish. So at many times, staff seem to attest to the non-freshness of Fill-A-Dough-Fish. One staff member called Patricius said,
I promise you that the Fill-A-Dough-Fish is not fresh by any stretch of the imagination.
Some McDonald's staff claim that due to its lack of popularity, the Fill-A-Dough-Fish can sit for a long time in the warming area until it's ordered. It's nothing to do with the fish itself, though, or how it's farmed. McDonald's says they use Alaska pollock from certified sustainable fisheries. From my research anyway, the fillet's fine, but a lot of staff seem to say the fillet could have been sitting stale in the hot box for many hours. But personally, I've had a very different experience. I'm one of those health nuts who will actually order the grilled chicken burger, which is another menu item that is very rarely ordered. But when I order it, it does take a bit longer, because the staff will get a frozen grilled chicken out and cook it up. Thus, it's cooked fresh, but I may have to wait 6 to 10 minutes for my order. A staff member on this MASH video claimed a similar case. As a staff member, Justin seemed to take great offense at the Philadelphia fish burger being called unfresh. His comment said,
I'm an ex-worker, and it depends on location. We never let fillet patties sit in the warmer too long. When we hear someone order rare items like fish or grilled chicken in the drive-thru, we immediately start cooking it so it's fresh when they receive it. Not every McDonald's is bad.
But if the Philadelphia fish burger is so disliked, why is it even still made? It's not like they turn it into chili like Wendy's. It seems like it's mostly just wasted. Apparently, though, the Philadelphia fish even predates the Big Mac. It all has to do with some people's religion. You see, back in 1948, many Christian Catholics would abstain from eating meat on Fridays, as well as during their 40-day Lent. But apparently, their teachings were fine with them still going for fish. McDonald's noticed that other fast food chains sold more fish during Lent and Fridays. So the Philadelphia fish was introduced. And apparently, to this day, it still sells very well during Lent. And next up, number 2, frappes and ice creams. If you haven't had one before, the frappe is basically the more indulgent version of the iced coffee. A sweetened bitter blend of iced coffee with cream on top. But for McDonald's and Starbucks employees, they tend to say steer clear of the frappe. Although they may look and taste okay, staff claim they're not as high quality as your standard iced coffee. The obvious calorific mess aside, they apparently have very little in terms of coffee. When I asked my community on Twitter, Mira, an employee of Starbucks, said,
These are not only a pain in the butt to make, but they also have very little coffee in them. In terms of nutrition, they're basically a milkshake. They are fine as a treat, but as your daily dose of caffeine, forget it.
And some staff claim the ice cream machines are a whole concern in themselves. Supposedly, some frappe and soft serve machines are just a moldy mess, according to a staff member named Jordan.
I can say with certainty that a lot of McDonald's stores don't have anyone properly trained to clean them. Thus,
Which is why apparently why they don't clean them.
moldy Sunday mix in the machine.
And Jordan isn't the only one to make these claims about the self-serve machines. When I went looking, there were a lot of photos and complaints on the cleanliness of these machines. Back in 2017, a McDonald's employee shared some photos of a tray in the machine he was meant to refill. And yeah, it does look pretty gross. But in my personal opinion, I don't think this is a problem in most soft-serve machines. Back in the day, I also worked as a barista, and I cleaned many frappe and coffee machines. And even the dirtiest ones I saw, well, they weren't going to cause you actual harm. Also, keep in mind, the self-serve machine is regularly broken or being serviced because it's regularly in its 4-hour cleaning mode. The process is well known enough to be highly frustrating to most people, and it seems to be happening all the time. So it does get cleaned and sanitized during this period, otherwise it would just keep going and never stop. Though maybe this 4-hour clean is skipped on a busy night in some restaurants, I don't know. But after researching this, I think it has more to do with the hygiene standards of the restaurant you go to. If the restaurant you go to looks like it's poorly kept and cleaned, maybe skip that soft serve. If the self-serve machine is regularly broken, that's probably a good sign they regularly clean it. And if you're not sure, just ask a staff member. It's a perfectly fair question to ask. Also, remember our old buddy that posted that disgusting tray pic? Well, here he is a few days later enjoying a soft serve, so, go figure. Number 1. Fast food ice. Of all the staff complaints, this one may be the most uncomfortable, because the amount of complaints I found on ice machines in fast food restaurants is pretty staggering. Even in my own comments, I found Kiara, who was a Krispy Kreme staff member. Their comment was,
I think I'll ever drink the coffee from Krispy Kreme. I heard they don't change the ice chest.
There's nothing holding you back. What would your thing be?
And this was just one of many, many comments and articles throughout the internet. Even news sites like WCNC ran articles looking at the health concerns of ice. Their video claimed that ice could make you sick if the machine is badly cleaned. While I personally don't think it's likely you'll get sick, the reporter Bill had been combing through health reports looking at violations. And the violation that came up far too often was pink or black buildup in the ice machine. The BBC even did a study of their own ice in 2017, and among 30 restaurants, more than half their ice samples were contaminated with fecal coliform bacteria.
What?
Hell no! A similar experiment was done by the Daily Mail in 2013. They collected ice from 10 well-known fast food chains. These were their results.
Unfortunately, 6 out of 10 locations of ice cubes were contaminated with higher bacteria than the water samples taken from their toilets.
Oh, either their toilets are really pristine clear, or their ice machines really need to be cleaned more often. I'm guessing the latter. You know, technically, this may mean the ice machine is cleaned less often than the fast food floor you walk on. Not that I recommend touching a fast food floor with anything but your shoes. It's such a health concern for some people. There are even entire organizations dedicated to restaurant ice safety, such as safeice.org, which has a pretty huge number of news articles on ice health violations. But I have to say, despite this, don't fret if you get a few extra ice cubes in your drink. It still wouldn't be huge levels of bacteria, and it's unlikely to give you anything beyond a stomachache. I just think we should expect better from some of these restaurants. If you are curious, take a little look at the ice coming out of the chute at your local fast food joint. According to the health department, keep an eye out for pink, black, or brown in your ice, as these colours are signs that the ice machine is not very regularly cleaned. You can also look at the health reports of your restaurant to see if ice has ever been a violation. However, with wholesale ice, you're likely to get a much cleaner experience, as wholesale ice is overseen by the FDA and the Department of Agriculture. It's just held to a much higher standard than restaurant ice. So if this is something that concerns you, just take a look for brown or pink in your ice, or just request no ice for that drink. After research, I don't worry about pink slime in my nuggets. I worry about pink slime in my ice. But, you know, don't lose sleep over this. And if you think I missed a bad fast food that should be avoided, or you just have your own silly story to tell, feel free to leave your thoughts in the comments below. And as always, thanks for watching. Hopefully I might see you next time. Today's main question is from Taylor 222222. I think it's 82s. They ask, do you have any other hobbies you enjoy or just like to wind down to? Question is for both Nin and me. I mean, obviously, I like juggling to relax, but I also like to relax running in the forest. I train for 2 to 3 marathon races a year if I can.
Keep exploring gone wrong. The chef keeps
Delivering the right
disaster.
message at the right time isn't always easy. But with Vonage SMS API, it's seamless. Programmatically send and receive text messages from end users all over the globe. And leave worrying about compliance to us. With our SMS API, we've got you covered.
In May of 1973, 8 divers were exploring the St.
I love this.
known as the Shadow, when something went horrifying wrong. This is their story. Today's video was brought to you by Babbel, one of the top language learning apps in the world. When I started this channel, I never anticipated. So, the population distribution in the state of South Australia is really weird. The largest city is the city of Adelaide, with just over 1 million people. The next largest city is Mount Gambier, at just 33,000. This makes the second largest city in the entire state over 40 times smaller than the next largest. In fact, the population of Adelaide is larger than all of the rest of the cities in the state combined, which is just kind of weird to think about. And so, although Mount Gambier is technically the second largest city in the state, it's really just a small city. Despite its size, though, the city is considered to be the most important settlement in the so-called Limestone Coast region. It sits right on the border of South Australia and Victoria, just a few kilometers north of the southern coast. It also happens to have been built on the slopes of a literal volcano, which is also named Mount Gambier. Both the city and the surrounding area are famous for some of these volcanic features, like the limestone topography, crystal blue lakes, caves, and sinkholes. On the outskirts of the city are a bunch of tar pits. These extend all the way to the shores to the south. One of these is just a small 5-acre area between Mount Gambier and the ocean on the western dairy farms, known as Thompson's Paddock. In 1938, a farmer was on the field at Thompson's Paddock on a piece of equipment being pulled by his horses, when all of a sudden, this horse just tripped and stumbled grass. The farmer thought that was weird, so he stopped his horses and got off the piece of equipment and walked over to where the horse tripped. What he found was a hole in the ground about a foot across that he hadn't ever noticed before. He got down on his hands and knees to take a look into the hole, and to his surprise, the hole extended for what looked to be at least 20 feet down, and then at the bottom, he could see water. This on its own was kind of amazing and creepy, but this was only just the beginning. It's not clear how long the farmer had this field, or why he hadn't noticed the hole in the ground before, and no one is really sure if the horse had caused the ground to collapse, or if the hole had always been there, and the farmer just hadn't noticed. Either way, that leads to the next question. If the horse had caused the hole to open up, doesn't that mean that it could collapse even further, and the area around the hole is now at risk of collapsing? To make matters worse, you can see from the surface that the narrow opening extended for maybe 2 or 3 feet, but after that, the sides weren't visible. It looked like it widened out, sort of like an upside-down funnel. In a worst-case scenario, imagine someone had been walking the field and had accidentally stepped into the opening. They would have fallen 20 feet to the water below, and then because of the shape of the upper section, they would have had no way to climb back out. All they've been able to do is tread water and scream helplessly. This was obviously kind of alarming for the farmer as well, because following the discovery of this opening, he decided to try to fill the pit with rocks. So over the next little while, he began to bring the soccer ball-sized stones to the opening and just started dropping them into the water down below. One by one, the rocks would make a big splash and then disappear into the dark water, never to be seen again. They reached the first dozen rocks, and they just kept disappearing. Then they dumped several dozen into the water. The dozens turned into 100, then hundreds, and there was still no trace of rocks down below. By the time they eventually gave up, they probably dumped thousands of rocks into the strange opening, and still not a single rock could be seen down in the water. It was like the hole was bottomless. In the end, the farmer just had to be cautious of the opening and hope that it didn't collapse any further. As you might imagine, news spread of this weird occurrence, and soon enough, people were coming to explore the hole. It was eventually determined to be a limestone sinkhole where slowly the water had dissolved the rocks below, leading to this large opening just a few feet below the surface. Eventually, this foot-wide hole was widened to be about 3 feet or 1 meter, so that could be more easily explored. Then, in the mid-60s, a diver was lowered into the cave for the first time. From the surface, he was lowered 23 feet or 7 meters before finally touching down on the water surface. And what he saw was that it was actually more like a small lake. Right below the entrance, it was narrow, but by the time you're at the water's surface, the room was already 56 feet or 17 meters wide. In addition to that, on a sunny day around noon, the sunlight shines directly through the opening and creates a sapphire blue beam of light that lights up the room and the water. From then on, the cave was given the name the Shaft because of this shaft of light. From the water's surface, the diver began scuba diving down into the cave and found that it just continued to widen out the deeper and deeper you go. In this first exploration, he got down to about 69 feet or 21 meters before ending up. The craziest part was that from where he had stopped, he could see all of the rocks that had been dumped into the cave years before. All of those hundreds of rocks looked like a little anthill down at the bottom of this massive room, and they were still at least 50 feet from where he had stopped. The cave was later mapped to have one massive chamber where the rocks were located, and then 2 incredibly deep descending arms that extend out in almost opposite directions. The main chamber is 460 feet long and 260 feet wide at its widest, and the top of the rock mount is 118 feet and 36 meters below the surface. Then from the main chamber, there's a tunnel that extends northwest to a depth of 260 feet or 80 meters. And then on the opposite side of that, there's another tunnel that extends all the way to 407 feet or 124 meters of depth. It's thought that these tunnels could stretch all the way to the southern shores as part of the intricate freshwater drainage system flowing through the mountains in the area. There are also several cliffs, overhangs, and restrictions in each of these corridors that make for some interesting features on the way down. These features, coupled with the crystal clear water and the sheer size to explore, make it a cave or stream. Importantly, a really accurate map didn't get made until all the way in 1984, but already by a decade earlier in 1973, 8,000 dives had already taken place inside the shaft. During all of those dives, the full depth of the cave wasn't known, and a full map hadn't been made. For all intents and purposes, it was considered to be bottomless. The newness of cave diving and the limitation of the then available equipment meant that cavers just sort of went to the edge of the charted area and then stared off into the abyss, wondering how deep the cave went. In May of 1973, a team of 9 divers planned to make what they thought might be a record dive in the shaft. On the 26th, they all arrived in Mount Gambier and set up tents at a campground near the famous Blue Crater Lake. Their goal was to reach the edge of the so-called perimeter at 250 feet of depth. This is essentially the edge of where the light from above filters through. Any deeper, and the angle of the ceiling obscures the light, and from then on, the water is almost pitch black. This also happens to be right around an area known as the drop-off. It's a point in the cave where the bottom is no longer visible from the edge above. That's what gave the shaft this reputation for being bottomless, because standing at the ledge, you can't see anything down below, but it clearly extends much farther. All 9 of the divers planned to make this attempt were dive instructors, but because this was a fairly ambitious undertaking, they planned to do a practice dive and set up some equipment prior to their real attempt. So, the following day, on the 27th, they got to the farmhouse. They parked alongside the opening and then set up the famous tripod hoist system that many of you will probably be familiar with. This hoist is used to lower the divers into the water down below, and incredibly, despite having been widened, the hole is still too narrow for divers to be lowered wearing their equipment. It has to be lowered separately. On the way up as well, a wire ladder is set up for divers to climb their way up. Once everyone was in the water, they were amazed to see just how big the hole was already at the surface. Next, they set up something known as a shot line, which is what they were there to do that day. This was a line from the surface that was waving and led directly down to the rock pile. This would make their descent smoother for the record attempt and give them more time to reach the edge. On the practice day, the deepest they went was about 200 feet, which was just around the perimeter of the rock pile and well within the light of the opening. While they were down there, though, they could see the famous edge off the distance, which was their goal. The bottom of the cave extended horizontally, and then just
Imagine being the farmer just having this giant hole in the ground, and it's just
to replace some of the batteries in their lights and refill all of their air cylinders. Then the next day on the 28th, they were back at the opening at noon, suited up and getting lowered back down.
having this giant hole in the ground. And that's like a little baby hole in the ground, right? It's a cute little hole, and it extends to this giant cave. That's some bragging right there.
Who would be entering the cave that day would be Robert, John, Peter, Gordon, Larry, and then 3 siblings, Glenn, Steve, and Christine. The others all dived back down to the rock pile at 130 feet and continued toward the tunnel where the ledge was located. At about 180 feet, Robert started to really feel the effects of nitrogen necrosis. This is when the nitrogen from the gas that was dissolved in the blood creates this sort of impaired, almost drunken feeling. This was a bit earlier than he normally felt it, but it was already significant enough that he knew he needed to head back up a little bit to dissipate the feeling. Now is maybe a good time to mention that because diving and cave diving were so new at the time, the protocols used hadn't really been established like they are today. There were a lot of amateurs who were participating who really shouldn't have been. Like, for example, these divers, although they were instructors, they only had experience in open water and perfectly clear, bright water. The second thing is that there was no requirement to be cave certified. Anyone could just sort of dive wherever they wanted with minimal oversight. But the final and most alarming thing is that these safety protocols were wildly different than what they are today. This group of divers planned to do a dive to a depth of 250 feet on regular air. If you're at all familiar with diving, you know how insane this is. Today, the maximum depth recommended to use
it's like 50 meters.
130 feet. Beyond that, nitrogen narcosis starts to kick in and can impair your judgment and motor function. At around 185 feet, the air actually becomes toxic and can cause convulsive seizures in some instances. If you were to have a seizure at depth, your mouthpiece just falls out and then you drown. So, taking all that into account, there were now 8 divers in the water on regular air, already at 180 feet. Robert signaled to the others that he was heading back to the rock pile, and they signaled back to him that they were going to keep going. He then swam around the rock pile, circling it and checking the area for animal bones that might have sunk to the bottom. About 8 minutes later, he saw Glenn's torch coming toward him. By then, Robert was close to being out of air, and so was Glenn, who had been watching his gauges. The 2 of them caught up with one another and then surfaced at around the same time. Larry surfaced around the same time as well, and then 30 seconds later, Peter, all of a sudden, everyone's stomach dropped as their realization set in, especially Glenn, whose brother and sister were still down in the water, next to no air left. A few minutes earlier, the group that had continued on without Robert were swimming and taking footage until they got to about 200 feet. Glenn and the others were swimming along a ledge along the bottom of the tunnel, just a few feet away from them. Everything was normal, the light above was still bright, and about 5 minutes total had passed since they started to dive. Around this time, Glenn was feeling kind of groggy from the narcosis and decided that he'd gone far enough as well. He checked his gauges and saw that he was getting low on air and knew that since everyone had the same amount of air, they'd also be running low. To be on the safe side, he decided to head back up. But before he did, he wanted to signal his sister Christine to let her know that she should probably head up too. He went to tap her on the shoulder, but before he did, she started taking her hands away from him out of reach. Not wanting to spend any more time down there, he figured they'd probably all follow along not too long after him anyway, so he just started up from the surface. Then he met up with Robert, and the two of them surfaced together. Around this time is when all hell broke loose in the cave. A combination of factors led to this being perhaps the deadliest cave diving incident in history. Right before Glenn started heading up, Peter was also feeling pretty impaired by the narcosis and wanted to check Glenn's depth gauge. He swam over to him, but Glenn started heading up before Peter could read him. Peter sat there for a moment, scanning the clear water at the bottom, and then noticed two other divers moving towards the exit. He checked how much air he had left, and that's when he realized the time was up. Then he turned to where he thought the exit was, and realized the cave had gone almost completely dark, and he had no idea which way the exit was. That day, shortly after the group entered the cave, clouds moved into the area and severely limited the amount of light shining through the opening. Peter started swimming around, searching for the exit. In just a few short moments, the area had become heavily settled, and divers were scattered all over the place. Three of these divers had been grouped together into the deepest section of the floor. In order, Christine was in front, Gordon was next, and Larry was in behind. Larry and Gordon kept their gaze and realized they were dangerously low in air. They signaled there was time to head, and they panicked as Christine was directly upward rather than diagonally towards the ceiling. In these limestone caves, every piece of rock heave up could be dome-shaped impressions in the ceiling. It's thought that the expelled gases from the divers had collected in one of these pockets, creating a mirror-like effect on the ceiling, similar to what the surface near the entrance would have looked like. In their impaired state, their flashlights bounced off this mirror, and in their panic, they thought they were swimming in the right direction. Then they would have swam directly up in the ceiling right above them. Gordon and Christine started frantically waving their flashlights around, terrified, looking at the exit. Right then, Larry's light went out. He dropped away from the ceiling for a moment, and miraculously, it turned back on, and because he had drifted down, he managed to see another diver off in the distance. He swam toward the diver, and then the angle was just enough for him to see the real entrance far ahead. He bolted for the entrance and surfaced right around the time Glenn and Robert did. Peter had also managed to find his way out of the silt and surfaced right after Larry. Upon seeing that 4 people were still missing, including his brother and sister, Glenn immediately got his threat and dove back down to try to find them. He got to the edge of the cliff at 225 feet, and his brother's flashlight came less than the bottom. He also found that any further in was completely silted out. Visibility was basically zero, but desperately wanting to find his siblings, he went over the drop off and into the silt. As soon as he entered the cloud, he could even see the hand in front of his face, and he started to panic. He immediately swam back up and he went to the rock out, and he just stared into his vest for some time, hoping to see any sign of him. Eventually, he was forced to return to the surface. Peter went down following Glenn's return, but he also found nothing. By then, the ambulance had arrived, and everyone knew there was no hope of finding anyone alive. Shortly after that, police arrived and planned for a body recovery the following day. These divers went down into the shaft, got to 200 feet, and found the cave was still very silted out. They were already at the limit of their capabilities and weren't able to locate any of the bodies that day or the day after during a second search. Following the second search, police called off entirely until they could get additional training from the Navy because the depth of recovery was groundbreaking, pushing the edge of the training they had. This would take at least several months to get their recovery skills up to speed. In January of the following year, before the bodies were recovered, the landowners that have filmed were making a cave diving documentary and entered the cave to do some filming. The crew had already filmed several of the others in the area and wanted to include the shaft as well. On the 22nd, they got down to about 50 feet down, using professional lighting equipment to make the cave so bright it was like daylight inside. While they were getting set up, a technician was looking at 2 of his teammates and he noticed there was a third person behind them. Kind of freaked out, they went over to inspect the unit and realized that it was a body in a wetsuit. They immediately stopped all filming and surfaced and called the police to let them know someone had been found. The next day, police retrieved the body, which was stuck under a narrow ledge just 50 feet deep into the water. They went down to 180 feet that same day and still weren't able to find any of the others. The one they did recover was later determined to be Steve, one of the siblings. By March of that year, the landowners had become increasingly uncomfortable. There were still 3 people somewhere down in the cave, so they sought the help of some more experienced divers with better equipment. On March 9th of 1974, this team of divers went down and began to search their home and would find a person lying on the back at 185 feet on the bottom. They also found another person directly underneath them. Then, 20 feet deeper, they found the final individual, the body of John, the rock ledge. His body wasn't able to be recovered until a month later because of the depth of the way the body was wedged. Almost a year later, on that fateful day, it's thought that Christine and Gordon had run out of air while in the When they were out of air, there was nothing they could do. This is why they were recovering so closely together. It's not clear exactly who saw John. One of the survivors mentioned seeing other divers really strongly deeper into the cave while everyone else was returning to the surface. This is thought to have been John, who was found the deepest in. It's thought that he was severely affected by nitrogen narcosis, and that's why he was going in the opposite direction. Finally, not much is known about Stephen's final moments. He was obviously found much higher than the rest of them along the ceiling instead of the bottom. When he was found, his buoyancy device was inflated, which kept him warm and stuck to the group. It's possible that in the silk during the dark, he tried to find the exit by floating to the ceiling and then crawling along. He might have then run out of air before making it out. However, since no one saw him, we'll never really know his final moments. This accident, as far as I can tell, is the worst in cave diving history. And in the few years preceding this incident, there were several other fatal incidents in nearby sinkholes in the Mount Campion area. The shaft disaster was the final straw and led to the establishment of the Cave Divers Association of Australia, with the goal of regulating the industry to prevent further tragedies from occurring. With the benefit of hindsight, we know that these divers should not have entered the cave without specific knowledge of cave diving. It's also easy to criticize their use of air instead of a mix, but back then, specialized gas mixtures just weren't widely available. They also should have used guide lines to explore those uncharted sections to avoid getting lost when the cave sells out or when it became dark. And in fact, these divers knew that lines should be used, but decided not to use them because of the size of the group they had. They knew that the line would likely get tangled, which would have been even more dangerous. In reality, for a dive like they did, they should have simply had a small group where lines could be used. Thankfully, following the establishment of the CBAA and other similar organizations, the rate of cave diving deaths has been drastically reduced ever since. Hello, everyone.
Sure, fella, right there.
There's never been a better time to start hot tubbing. Hi, I'm Josh from Backyard Leisure. If you're ready to start hot tubbing, then...
In this video, we're going over a lesson of cave explorer stories that demonstrate that no matter how prepared you might be, or how seemingly innocuous what cave exploring is, the margin for error in cave is incredibly small. And when something does go wrong, the consequences can be extreme. As always, viewer discretion is advised. One thing that I always loved to do when I was building the beach as a kid was digging sand. And hopefully this is relatable to many of you, but in particular, I loved digging holes in the sand. And the goal was always to try to dig as big of a hole in the sand as possible for my siblings and me to play in, or build sandcastles, or just fill with water. And if you ever did this as a kid, you know how challenging this is, because at the beach, you don't have to dig very deep before water starts coming out of the sand. This water will quickly grow to the sides and walls, causing the sides to collapse. But this only adds to the excitement, because it's like you're racing against time to keep the water at bay and keep your sand hole or your castle from collapsing. Now, although this is something that I thoroughly enjoyed as a kid, I'm also now aware of just how dangerous this is in the right circumstances. In 2017, an 18-year-old brother and 17-year-old sister were visiting Toms River, New Jersey, which is a coastal city of about 100,000 people. And despite it being in New Jersey, there are actually several beautiful white sand beaches along the coast. That day, they were there for a nice vacation, just hanging out in the sun and spending some time on the beach. And although they were in their late teens, they were passing the time by taking the sand. Unlike me when I was a kid, they weren't just using their hands to dig a hole. They were using a frisbee to dig more efficiently. This meant that within just a little while, they managed to dig a massive 10-foot hole in the ground.
Dude.
Immensely proud of this, the two of them still weren't satisfied with how long they continued digging deeper. Unfortunately, sand is a little bit different than regular dirt. Because it's more rapid and smooth, sand particles are actually a bit more like little marbles. Under normal circumstances, these don't stick together all that well, but when you're at the beach, the reason you can make sand is the moisture that's in the sand. This helps the sand to stick together and be shaped in all sorts of ways. As the sand dries out, the tendency to stick together decreases and reduces its structural integrity. This means that it's more easily disturbed by people walking around, by vibrations in the crowd, and even just by its own weight. So at some point, as the brother was digging in this 10-foot pit, the hole collapsed on top of him, completely covering him in sand and partially covering his sister. People rushed over to help him out and dig him out as fast as they could, knowing that time was quickly running out. Just 1 cubic foot of sand weighs 100 pounds, meaning that just a relatively small amount of sand will weigh heavily someone's chest. In addition to being crushed by the sand, being covered in it is completely suffocating. All the air would be completely removed from the hole, and even if there was a pocket to breathe, his chest would have been almost impossible to inflate because of the weight of the sand. So tragically, by the time he was finally uncovered, he had unfortunately already died of asphyxiation. His sister, thankfully, would be recovered with just minor injuries. This has to be one of the most tragic ways to go, simply because it can occur from doing such a seemingly innocent activity, like digging a hole in the sand. And unfortunately as well, these occur every couple of years, making them even more tragic. This next story also takes place in New Jersey, which, believe it or not, is actually home to a decent number of caves, and not just man-made caves like in the previous story. There are dozens of caves spread across the relatively small state that have formed in all different rock types and all sorts of geological processes. In March of 1982, a state police sergeant named Donald took the Boy Scout troop that he was to explore one of these caves. He was an avid spelunker and just recently thought that it would be a fun activity for the scout group to participate in as well. Since winter was over and they were finally getting some warmer weather, the group had planned the last few weekends to explore. And now, for the first time ever, both of his sons, who were also scout members, were old enough to come on one of these trips. You can just imagine how excited they must have been to finally go caving with their father. The cave they would be exploring was actually the longest in the state at around 1,250 feet, known as Crooked Swamp Cave. Unlike some of the other caves across the U.S., Crooked Swamp Cave is essentially just a narrow passage through limestone bedrock. About 2 miles northwest of the town of Lafayette, the cave is bordered by a swamp on one side. The water from the swamp in this area has slowly dissolved the passages over thousands of years, which were then discovered by people and named. As you might imagine, this is not one of those grand limestone caverns that is filled with massive smooth chambers. This is one of those dirty, muddy, crawl-in-your-stomach type caves. In fact, some of the tunnels are so small that it was once thought to be 3 separate caves. It was only later that spelunkers realized that some of these tiny tunnels were actually connected together. On Saturday, Donald, 18 scouts, and a few other scoutmasters entered the cave and started exploring at around 2 p.m. After entering the cave, the scoutmasters carefully led the scouts through some of the chambers and even some of the tighter squeezes. One of these is known as the 5-foot-high room and is only accessible by very thin individuals, because the side passage that leads to it is a seriously narrow squeeze. But at 5'11", 160 pounds, Donald could make it, and with the scouts mostly being teenagers, this wasn't much of an issue. The cavers moved out of that room shortly after, because it's also known to have an unstable roof, which could technically collapse at any second. Part of the way through their trip, Donald entered an uncharted area that required him to crawl along his stomach through a long, narrow tunnel. He kept crawling through this tunnel, scooting his body along until it started winding down at about a 30-degree angle. Now about 15 feet underground and about 75 feet from the entrance, all of a sudden, Donald slipped and slid all the way down to the end of a 16-foot drop. In the fall, he was completely wedged in the tiny tunnel with his arms pinned underneath him, in a position that is eerily reminiscent of John Jones in Nutty Buddy Cave. Immediately, Donald knew he was very stuck. He'd forcefully slid into the spot, which wedged him much farther than he could have gotten just by crawling. And because he had no time to stop himself, his arms got trapped in a weird position that prevented him from having any leverage to push himself back. In the little 18-inch by 20-inch tunnel, Donald was wedged almost like a cork. Shortly after realizing he was very stuck, he called back to the others and explained the situation. But because of how far down he'd fallen, it was a challenge for anyone to even reach him, let alone pull him out. His 2 sons and one of the scoutmasters tried unsuccessfully for about an hour to pull him out before realizing that they needed to look for help. By then, all of the other scouts had already left. The other scoutmasters, so the remaining 3 finally alerted authorities about the situation. When rescuers arrived, they got into the tunnel and talked with Donald, who at this point was still in good spirits. He joked with them and even asked them to tell his wife that he'd be home later that day. But an often underrated factor in cave fatalities is the cold. In the last centuries below, cavers have developed different clothing and layering to combat this, but much of this improvement has come only recently. In early spring in New Jersey, it's still relatively cold outside. Inside the cave, the temperature was just 57 degrees, or 13 degrees Celsius, and in addition to blood pooling in his head because of the angle he was at, Donald got very cold. After the first rescuers realized how badly he was stuck, word was sent out to cave rescue organizations all over.
Steve, you have to help me. I'm stuck.
In no time, rescuers
Sorry.
would be flown all over to get Donald out as quickly as
I can't
possible.
imagine. He's stuck up. Oh, he's stuck. Yeah, I have up to. Yeah, he's stuck upside down. That's gonna suck.
They used chisels and drills to widen the tunnels, and ropes and pulleys attached to his feet. But unfortunately, they were only able to move him just a few inches before he slid back into place. In the fall, the rock had gotten wet right near his hips. As they pulled, the rock would roll and eventually wedge himself, preventing him from being moved any further. That evening, Donald was still fully coherent, communicating with rescuers, but as the night wore on, it was clear that Donald was starting to suffer from hypothermia. He was occasionally able to get out a few words, but started to drift in and out of consciousness. Then at around 2 a.m. on Sunday, now 12 hours since entering the cave, Donald made a few last grunts and then stopped making noise entirely. At the same time, two sisters arrived from Pittsburgh who were members of the Cave Rescue Commission and were specifically known for their ability to access the tiniest packages. In their early 20s, one of the sisters was just 5'2" and the other was just 5 feet tall and 86 pounds. Not only were they catered themselves, but because of their petite stature, they'd often been called on these special rescues where the situation demanded individuals of their size. More importantly, though, although maybe it wasn't entirely comfortable for them to be in such tiny spaces, you were able to keep calm and collected despite the circumstances. A few sisters took turns going into the tunnel where Donald was, but were still unable to reach his head because of how narrow it was. The farthest they were able to reach were his feet, where they checked for a pulse and found nothing. And although this was concerning, he was also very cold. When you're hypothermic, the word is vital organs, which can weaken
Vasoconstriction. Cardiovascular vasoconstriction.
To keep him alive. Rescuers worked desperately to get Donald out, but by the following morning, hope was starting to wane. A nurse was sent down around 6 a.m. and managed to get all the way to his feet. She was able to check his pulse at his foot, behind his knee, and then wait for electrocardiogram. But by then, no pulse was detected. Upon realizing that Donald was now on the verge of death, a new plan was put in place to dig straight down to him. An 18.
Give me a second.
There's a pretty big storm over there.
Where?
Here, come here.
Yeah, it's warm out here, but when you come down here, it's cold. You know why?
Temperature.
Cold air stinks. It's chemistry. Oh god, I need to get my figure in a second.
And then one person would be lowered down in a small cage to chisel out the body from where he was stuck. It would take until the afternoon on Sunday.
What's that?
But then it would take all the way to Monday to throw sideways to reach it. Then, angle and space they were working when they finally reached it, despite the rest, they were only able to move an additional foot. It was at this point that Donald was officially pronounced dead. Following this announcement, a full demolition of the hillside commenced using dynamite and heavy machinery. Then, after 80 hours trapped underground, Donald's body was finally recovered from Crooked Swamp Cave. It was determined that due to hypothermia, first he had passed out, then he went into shock, and finally he ultimately died of cardiac arrest.
Yeah,
His body temperature was a full 20 degrees lower upon recovery. And since the incident, access to Crooked Swamp Cave has been restricted to only individuals with explicit permission.
Sure, wellness goals are great, but so are little changes for the better. Like better sleep, a better mood.
It's often assumed that cave diving is an activity that's only undertaken by risk takers. At face value, it seems like a risky activity, and therefore, of course, people doing it must have a tendency to engage in risky behavior. But if there's one thing that I've learned about cave diving over the course of making all these videos, it's the fact that for the most part, cave divers are not risk takers. Now, this may be due to survivorship bias, but to me, it seems most of these individuals tend to be calm and highly analytical. At least those who have long careers, and especially those who choose to do dives. The amount of math, chemistry, and physics involved in planning out these dives is something that's super underappreciated and stuff I generally leave out. This is mostly because including this stuff would complicate sometimes already confusing stories, and even if I did want to include them, I don't have the aptitude to make sure I'm giving the correct information. But even if these concepts are hard to understand, they are often the difference between life and death in cave diving. So a word of caution, if you can't squash that propensity for risk-taking, cave diving is probably not for you. Born in 1958 in Wrocław, Poland, Władek Simonowski discovered caves at the Lucky towards the end of high school. Then when he got into university, he saw that a super happy and optimistic person. He was one of those people who's just good at anything he tried. Using humor, he could diffuse any social conflict. Because of how quickly he learned anything he started, he quickly became an expert. In fact, he was actually one of the first stockbrokers, which was a profession that became highly successful. In addition to his love for caving, he was also an avid climber, experienced in the Tatra ranges in Poland, the Dolomites in Italy, and the Swiss and French Alps.
Well, look at that on radar. I wonder what it looks like. Let's see. It's probably just a fart. Yeah, a few organized cells. One just south of El Paso. Nothing that severe. They're all moving north, though.
Towards us.
There's one little baby cell going towards us, but it doesn't seem like that threatening.
Around this time as well, cave diving started to get more popular. He watched as many of his contemporaries switch from dry caving to underwater caving. Wlodek had also always wanted to get into diving, so as the industry shifted that way, he figured it was time for him to take that step as well. Naturally, Wlodek started as a beginner workshop, but because of his caving experience and natural talent, he was quickly one of the leading divers in Poland. Following the death of another of Poland's premier divers, Wlodek inadvertently took on the title of the most active cave diver in the country. Then, in April of 2005, he went to France on another one of his normal trips, this time to explore some of the unique flooded systems in a town called Saint-Médéo. And these truly are some unique systems. The town itself is only about 7,000 people, with a large river running through its east side. But because of the age of the town, all of the buildings are these old stone constructions. Some of the roads are cobblestone. The entire area is nestled into rolling, rocky hills. In the middle of all of this is a small, unassuming park and two small, equally unassuming caves. One of these is underneath a railway bridge and almost looks like the opening of a well, and the other is like a small grotto cut into a cliffside. What you can't see from the surface is that these are actually massive underwater cave systems. The larger of the two, Goule de Tenerife, is over 1 kilometer long and at least 210 meters, or close to 700 feet deep. The other one, Goule du Pont, is almost the same depth, but just not quite as long. And not only are these caves massive, they're also filled with crystal clear water and beautifully colored limestone tunnels. In contrast to the last story, these are those picturesque caves that you imagine when you think of cave. One of these caves, Wlodek planned to do both of them. He goes, if a little is good, more is better. Then, one morning in April, Wlodek slipped on all of his equipment in the cobblestone parking lot of the park and prepared to enter one of these unassuming ponds. For this dive, he wouldn't actually be going all that deep. This was going to be Goule de Tenerife, which is interestingly shaped because it extends horizontally for over 2,000 feet at less than 30 feet of depth before finally getting deeper. After that initial horizontal tunnel, though, it quickly winds its way down to that massive 700-foot depth. One particular section is a 300-foot shaft that descends almost vertically into the earth. But given the length of that initial horizontal section, it's kind of impractical to get very deep because of just how much gas you have to carry with you. The deep dive that he intended to do would be reserved for the following day in the other cave. After finishing up that day, tacking out all of his equipment, Wlodek and his team returned to their hotels and got a good night's rest for his record-breaking dive the following day. This dive was going to be a special dive because Wlodek intended to smash his own depth record and push it to almost 400 feet. Goule du Pont was perfect for this because it descends rapidly without much extra horizontal distance. This meant he could limit his time in the water while also extending his depth record in this beautiful cave. Then, the following morning at 9 a.m., he and his team were back at the pond, getting all of his equipment ready. For this dive, he'd be using his equipment of choice, which was a rebreather, and then 2 backup gas cylinders, one with air for the shallower sections and one trimix for the deeper sections. A rebreather is more complicated than a traditional system, but it offers some advantages, like being able to stay underwater for longer. On the other hand, rebreathers are more expensive and more complicated, but that's also exactly what Wlodek loved. He'd often opt for more complicated equipment, even if simpler stuff was available, just because he liked to tinker around with it. Finally, he performed this long rebreather pre-checkup to make sure everything was working correctly. A few pictures were taken of him on the surface, and then he dipped his head under the water.
You know that the popular fungus treatment you've been using can actually be making your toenail fungus worse.
Okay. I love those. Those are so weird.
It's ideal for cave, but that wouldn't be much of an issue in Goule du Pont, except for one tight squeeze at the mouth of the cave. Now, out of all the stories I've covered, it wasn't until this one that I fully appreciated just how complicated, deep, technical rebreather diving is. As you move through the water-filled passages, you have to monitor the oxygen level of your breathing gas and adjust it according to the depth you're at to equalize the pressure.
The same thing goes for your dry suit and your buoyancy control device. You also have to monitor the pressure of your cylinders and keep track of the readings on your computer. You also have to watch how quickly you're descending and how long you've been underwater. Even just adding air to your buoyancy device is not straightforward. As you go deeper, the air compresses and becomes less buoyant, meaning that the amount of air needed for the same buoyancy at different depths is different. Then on the way up, the inverse is true, and you have to do all of this in a maze of pitch black tunnels, ensuring you don't bump into anything and kick up silt, or you'll essentially blind yourself. As you might imagine, keeping track of all of this requires a lot of concentration, even with a clear head. If your head isn't clear and you make a mistake, things can go seriously wrong very quickly. At around 10 a.m., Wlodek traveled from the surface diagonally down to the first and only restriction at around 35 feet. He carefully squeezed the tanks and equipment through, being mindful not to disturb the silt. From the initial drop, the cave levels out a bit and extends another 165 feet almost horizontally. At the end of the tunnel, there's an abrupt drop down a 30-foot vertical shaft. After getting to the opening, Wlodek maneuvered his body in such a way that allowed him to stay horizontal as he descended. This was crucial using the type of equipment that he was using. At the bottom of the shaft, now about 100 feet down, the cave descends further in a series of steep diagonal steps down to 215 feet. This is around when Wlodek's issues would have started. To combat the narcotic effect of different gases at depth, divers breathe a mixture of gases different than regular air. This narcotic effect is almost like being drunk or very tired, but in either case, it impairs your judgment and reflexes. The trimix of gases that deep divers use mitigates this to a degree, but there can still be some effect anyway. Some people have a weird resistance to narcosis, while others are very sensitive to it, and this effect will even vary from day to day in the same person. Now getting down to below 200 feet, Wlodek likely noticed that this narcotic effect was particularly bad that day. But just 140 vertical feet from his depth record and highly experienced, he probably assumed that it was just one of those days and continued onward. It's also possible that at this point in his dive, he was already significantly impaired. At 260 feet of depth, the steep steps stop, and then there's another short horizontal passage. And although Wlodek's thoughts were increasingly impaired, he was so close to the end that he couldn't just stop. There was just one last drop, and then he would come back
Battery
up.
as well.
Unfortunately, this
There's
would be his final
charger.
crucial mistake.
Right
In
there.
fact, Wlodek should have never entered the water that day. Long before he even entered, he had made a mistake that doomed this attempt right from the start. The trimix divers use is a mixture of oxygen, helium, and nitrogen in different ratios for different depths. This has to be correct and relatively precise. With too much oxygen, you get oxygen toxicity. Too little, you get hypoxia, and so on and so on. Somehow, Wlodek had mixed the wrong gases or grabbed the wrong tank and never tested the mixture he was using. The narcotic effect he was feeling wasn't unusually strong that hit because of a bad day. It was unusually strong because he was breathing in weight, gas pollution. Then he swam over the edge of the final 100-foot vertical shaft and started his descent. Carefully watching his descent rate, oxygen, pressure, and everything else, Wlodek started to make mistakes. As he descended, his foggy brain prevented him from understanding exactly what was going on. Halfway through the vertical shaft, his breathing was labored because he wasn't equalizing the pressure properly. He continued descending rapidly and finally impacted the bottom, now at 360 feet of depth. Barely being able to breathe, he struggled to switch the circuit to the spare cylinder on his rebreather. This would have given him the crucial minute he needed to switch over to his backup trimix. Finally, he got it and started breathing again, but by then, he was either too impaired or semi-conscious, and then the mouthpiece dropped out of his mouth and he began to inhale water. Yeah, the surface team knew something was wrong. This was their pre-planned time to indicate that he might need some help. They made 2 attempts at a rescue down to a depth of 230 feet, but at this depth, Wlodek was still far out of reach. Following these attempts, they knew that Wlodek had died somewhere in the depths of Guinchpong. Then the following day, his body was recovered from the bottom of the vertical shaft at a depth of 360 feet, with his mouthpiece out of his mouth and 2 full backup cylinders. Hello everyone, my name is Sean and welcome to Skin.
I'm gonna take a break. I'm gonna go up and ask for my dinner and wait for